Down to business.
When he drinks, he thinks.
That's the nectar of the gods, baby.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the number one liquid-fueled, liquid lubricated show on the interwebs. This is the Whiskey Musings Broadcast. And I gotta tell you, this snuck up on me. It really, really did. And I honestly, I wasn't even aware that we were at 250 years from the point where the Sons of Liberty, who were against taxation without representation, went ahead and got together and dumped essentially what would be valued today at $1 million worth of tea into Boston Harbor. Now, the funny part about it is when you're in school, civics tells you that this was like one of the key things that started off the entire Revolutionary War, but it actually isn't. I mean, in terms of the time frame and everything else, this particular act was a lead up to that, but it wasn't like one of the key things in terms of kicking things over. And in fact, they didn't even call it the Boston Tea Party. They didn't even call it the Boston Tea Party at the time. They didn't even call it that. So it's really kind of funny. I got some of that stuff because obviously it's going to come up in the American Patriots Almanac on today's on this day in American history. Also, I have some other things too. Some other facts and figures and information about the Boston Tea Party that was outside of the that's outside of what the American Patriots Almanac is going to talk about. And 3 Chevy, of course, the non-deprogrammed deplorable himself, puts up, can we dump Joe in the harbor? Well, that would be murder. And realistically, I don't think it would do anything. Even if we did, we still have all of the freaking stupid bureaucrats and administration officials from Obama's administration and all, and we'd end up with Kamala Harris, who's even worse. But anyway, that would that would be interesting. All right, let me get on. Let me get on with this. So, in celebration of today, I rarely do doubles, where I do the same drink both on a Wednesday and a Saturday. But given that it's the 250th anniversary of the Boston Tea Party, I'm drinking the 1776 bourbon. I was actually up at the store earlier and picking up some things, and I saw another bottle and thought about purchasing it, but I'm gonna wait. And, of course, I am drinking it tonight in my favorite LuckyShotUSA.com, the We the People shot glass with the shot right here. Well, shot glass. It's not a shot glass. It's a glass that's been shot. Okay. Anyway, and, of course, I've got my rocks or my whiskey stones in the bottom there. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. 1776. It's some good stuff. I mean, a little harsher than what I'm used to, but that's okay. It happens. All right. So the state our country is in, it seriously makes me think that there's literally no way that the founding fathers would allow the crap that is happening today, even remotely, given the fact some of the facts on the Boston Tea Party in particular and some of the other things. And yes, buddy, I'm aware it's called a highball glass. I get it. Yeah. Where's my cursor? Here we go. Yeah. So, yep, I see it. Oh, it doesn't come up on this. So yes, I know it's called the highball glass. But anyway, I was making a joke, or trying to. So anyway, there's no way that our founders, honestly, would have been accepting of the crap that not only this administration, but let's be honest, in terms of even previous administrations, some of the things that have been going on. I mean, they would be disappointed going all the way back to like FDR, as an example. They would be disappointed even before that. Just the things that have occurred since the founding and the writing of the U.S. Constitution in particular, is just absolutely, it's absolutely astounding to me on some of the things that are going on. I mean, I've gotten into, discussions, I'll say. You could call them arguments, but I've gotten into discussions on social media with some dumb people, literally dumb people, who, say, for an example, when I talk about things like the abortion not being part of the Constitution and not being a part of the federal government's responsibilities, they get all uptight about that because they think, for whatever reason, they've been brainwashed or whatever, to believe that that a person's health was something that the founders thought the federal government should be responsible for. And that literally is not the case. I mean, if you want to see what the federal government was originally supposed to be responsible for, just all you have to do is take a look at Article 1, Section 8. It lists everything that the legislature, which is essentially our lawmaking body, was supposed to do. And if you go and was responsible for, and if you go and take and extrapolate from that, the president's powers are simply this: take the legislature's ideas, their laws, and take them and put them into action. That's called executing those laws. So, how anybody can sit here and think, first of all, that the president has any plenary power to just create legal precedent and laws through executive orders is just absolutely asinine. If you sit and read the Constitution, the way that it was originally written and everything else, and keep in mind too that a lot of people, I mean, I got into a discussion with some other folks on social media who keep talking about how the Bill of Rights, was part of the original Constitution, and that's not true either. The Bill of Rights actually wasn't even written and passed until about a year after the Constitution was first originally written and ratified. So, even the first 10 amendments, which ironically James Madison didn't believe at first, didn't believe that they were even needed or required, didn't even get put in. They weren't part of the original text of the Constitution. The original text of the Constitution is essentially, I think it's 6 or 7 articles long. And so, I just don't understand, how people can sit here and talk about, how all of this additional things that the federal government is doing is all part of the federal government's job. If you want to make it so, there's a way to do it. It's called Article 5 and amending the Constitution. If you want the federal government to be in charge of health care, for an example, then go ahead and amend the Constitution and put that in as an addition or an addendum to Article 1, Section 8. If you want things like abortion in there, then go ahead and, again, run it through Article 5 and go to Article 1, Section 8 and amend it. I mean, it's been amended before. We've done it 27 freaking different times. There's no reason why we can't do it a 28th time. But for us to sit here and believe all of the federal programs and everything else that FDR put into place, which, again, keep in mind, some historians, I'm not going to say all, but some historians actually believe that FDR extended the Great Depression by an additional something like 10 to 12 years because of his actions. He never should have been able to do half the stuff that he did. And when people argue about things like Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid and all of that other stuff, if you go back and actually read the text of the original Constitution, that all falls under things that would essentially fall to the 10th Amendment, which is literally, if it's not written here or specifically prohibited by this document to the states, then it belongs to the states. And that's part of the reason why I keep saying on multiple occasions that the 10th Amendment, to me, is the most unused amendment. Everybody talks about the first and everybody talks about the second. We're all aware of those. Everyone's aware of those. But the 10th Amendment, I think, is the most underused amendment, and it should be used against every single government overreach that we have in place today. All right. Speaking of the Constitution, let me go ahead and get going on my first thing. The Institute on the Constitution was established in 2004 as a 501c3 nonprofit with one singular mission: to restore the constitutional republic through grassroots education. All courses and materials are developed using primary source documents and taught from the American view of law and government as defined in the Declaration of Independence in the following three key points. 1, there is a God. 2, our rights come from him. And 3, the purpose of civil government is to secure and protect our God-given rights. The IOTC offers the opportunity to educate yourself on our most precious founding document, the Constitution of the United States. They also provide tools to educate your community and get involved with local government. Start by taking their free U.S. Constitution course and go from there. Use my affiliate link, iotc.whiskeymusings.online, to sign up. And while you are there, take a moment to look through their other course material and information. My affiliate link, once again, is iotc.whiskeymusings.online to get great content to learn about our historical founding and support the show in the process. That's iotc.whiskeymusings.online. Or if you just want to purchase this fabulous Saddleback, a leather-bound U.S. Constitution to support the show, go to constitution.whiskeymusings.online. Check this out. It is 1/8 of an inch of Saddleback leather. The inside pages are rip and water resistant. Check out that binding. It goes all the way through the leather and the paper. It has a 100-year warranty against manufacturing defects and workmanship. And it also has, according to my Rumble fans, and now apparently it's passing on to Facebook, it's got sexy rounded corners. Go and grab one of these today. Give it off to your conservative friends. They will love it. It's pocket sized. It's been buddy tested, buddy approved. It's Billy chewed and approved. And the contents inside are certified as to be 100% accurate, because my youngest whiskey warrior, and I don't even know if he knows that I mention him every Saturday on this, but my youngest whiskey warrior has verified it by passing his civics exam using this fantastic book. Go and get yours today, constitution.whiskeymusings.online. It's a little late probably to get it for Christmas, but you know what? That's okay. Give it for birthdays too. Get one for yourself as a late Christmas gift. They are fantastic. I know everybody that has gotten one has loved it, and it's perfect pocket sized, it's travel sized, it's great. So go and get yours today, constitution.whiskeymusings.online. And of course, while you get the opportunity, go and check out the rest of the Institute on the Constitution's information, books. They've got all kinds of stuff up there, but go and check them out today. I do appreciate that. And I appreciate them for allowing me to be an affiliate. And, you know, obviously any purchase that you make at either one of those links will support the show in the process. So thank you very, very much. All right. So let's get on to, of course, tonight's On This Day in American History. And, of course, for On This Day in American History, I keep forgetting to do this. On This Day in American History, we read from the American Patriots Almanac. It is written by William J. Bennett and John T.E. Cribb. It is chock full with all kinds of information, and they put it into a year-long format, month by month. So that's why I've got this marked. We're coming to the end of the year, folks. We'll be starting back over, but this is a fantastic book. It is great for the American Patriot in your family. It's got all kinds of little factoids and stuff, even stuff that we don't read, like things about flags and all this other stuff. There's little bits and pieces in between each month that is there for you to just, grab onto and learn about this grand historical fantastic country that we call home. But tonight is December 16th, and so we're going to talk about, of course, the Boston Tea Party. On the cold, damp night of December 16th, 1773, a few dozen colonists wearing old clothing and black faces, they black-faced. Oh my gosh, they'd be like totally canceled today. Under today's rules, you can't wear blackface. Sorry, I digress. And black faces tramped through the streets of Boston toward 3 ships tied up at Griffin's Wharf. The Mohawks, they called themselves, clambered aboard the Dartmouth, the Eleanor, and the Beaver, and began hoisting chests of tea from the vessel's holds onto the decks. Working quietly and efficiently, they carried the chests to the rails, split them open, and dumped the tea into Boston Harbor. The late-night raid came in response to the Tea Act, passed by British Parliament. That law gave the financially troubled East India Company, a British company, a virtual monopoly on the American tea trade. The Americans were already unhappy that Britain had placed a tax on their tea. Now, they told themselves, Parliament was dictating where they must buy their tea. In the colonists' eyes, tea had become a symbol of British oppression. So, into the harbor went 342 chests. In less than 3 hours, the Boston Tea Party was over. Their work done, the, quote, Indians swept the ship's decks, bid the crews farewell, and marched into the night, whistling Yankee Doodle. Well, boys, you've had a fine, pleasant evening in your Indian caper, haven't you? A British admiral who had watched the entire episode called, I can't do a British accent, I'm sorry, I was going to try, but I can't. But mind, you have got to pay for the fiddle, you've got to pay the fiddler yet. Indeed, Boston would be made to pay. George III was so outraged at the act of defiance, we must master them or totally leave them alone, he declared. Parliament responded with what was called the Intolerable Acts, which, among other measures, closed the port of Boston and required colonists to give lodging to British troops. Infuriated patriots viewed the reprisals as outright tyranny and turned their thoughts toward independence. And that is today's On This Day in American History. Now, I want you to take note of a couple of things. So notice that one of the things that is, so again, keep in mind, the Tea Party itself was not the trigger, even though a lot of people think it was, okay? But the Tea Party itself was not the trigger. And in fact, the Tea Party happened after 2 other taxes had been passed. They had the stamp tax, and let me see when those were. So let's see. I got to find it. Yes, the Stamp Act of 1765, which actually taxed the colonists on virtually every piece of printed paper that they used, from playing cards to business licenses to newspapers, legal documents. And then the Townshend Acts, or the Townsend Acts, however you want to pronounce it, of 1767 went a step further, taxing essentials such as paper, paint, glass, lead, and of course, tea. Now, the funny thing is, those two taxes, the Stamp Act and the Townsend Acts, were actually removed, but the tea tax stayed. And the reason being is because the Indian Trading Company, India Bay Company, I think is what it's called. Hold on. Yeah, they had repealed the tax. I got to find it here. Oh, the British East India Company. So the British East India Company had actually been going into receivership, and they were losing money. They were about to be bankrupt. And what ended up happening is the British Parliament left the tea acts, or the tea tax, in place because they were trying to backfill some of the tea. And also, too, keep in mind that there was a whole stockpile of old tea that they were trying to get rid of, and they went ahead and started sending it across to the Americas. And so the Sons of Liberty reportedly put this together. And it wasn't actually even, believe it or not, it wasn't actually even due to the tax. I mean, the tax itself on the tea really didn't raise the tea price much higher than, what it was normally. I mean, if at all, in some cases. They didn't even bother with it. But it was the idea that the colonists were getting taxed without, of course, having representation in Parliament, hence the phrase taxation without representation. I mean, you had the stamp tax, the Townsend tax, or Townsend Act, and now you have the Tea Act, which followed it up. And so what happened was the Tea Act originally allowed the British East India Company to sell the tea to the colonies duty free, but yet still tax the tea. And it turned into a thing where tea smuggling started happening. And so tea smuggling from trying to go away from the British East India Company, because of the fact that a lot of people felt that Parliament was trying to essentially force the colonists to buy only from the British East India Company, because again, keep in mind, British East India Company was in dire straits. They were about to be bankrupt, and the Parliament helped them, or tried to help them. Now, here's another couple of things about the Tea Party that a lot of people don't think of, or a lot of people don't know. The Tea Party itself happened on they were British East India Company ships, but they were actually 3 American ships. Those 3 ships that I described were actually owned by American merchants here in America, even though they were chartered by and run by the British East India Company. And the tea that ironically was dumped in the harbor was mostly Chinese green tea, not the English Earl Grey tea, Earl Grey was one flavor, but the tea that was actually dumped in the harbor, most of it came from China. It wasn't even like English tea. It wasn't owned by the British Parliament or anything like that. And so, even though it was, it's obviously considered an act of rebellion, it wasn't like what you see in the storybooks and everything else. And when they dressed up, they didn't even dress up very well as Indians. I mean, everybody knew who it was. But anyway, so John Hancock and Samuel Adams were key, reportedly, in this entire situation. They were key in setting this up because they were part of the Sons of Liberty. And those Sons of Liberty was actually a group of merchants and tradesmen They founded originally to protest the Stamp Act and other forms of taxation. And of course, it also reportedly included some people such as Benedict Arnold, Patrick Henry, Paul Revere. We all know all of those names. So it wasn't until, so the Dartmouth and the Beaver and the Eleanor, those are the three ships. And they were loaded with tea from China. So it wasn't even English tea. It was Chinese tea that was dumped in the harbor. That's kind of funny. Realistically. But again, keep in mind, 342 chests at today's values, that was close to $1 million in today's money that was dumped. Now, the thing about it is, though, is not everybody actually agreed with what the Sons of Liberty had done. In fact, George Washington publicly said that this whole thing was just an act of rebellion, and publicly he said that he was in support of it and so on and so forth. But privately he actually didn't like physical acts of protest. He also didn't like the violence that had happened, like the Boston Massacre had happened just before the Boston Tea Party. And things of that nature. And actually, Benjamin Franklin offered to pay the British East Indian Company himself, and he requested that the colonies put together the money to pay back the tea and be reimbursed, have the East India Company be reimbursed for the tea being dropped into the harbor. So, so there's a few things on that. But what came after that is what really turned the tide. So, yes, they were arguing about, the tax on tea, the taxes that they were getting. They weren't being represented in Parliament, so on and so forth. But what they called the coercive acts, which were later called the intolerable acts, okay, is what really, really kicked it off. And this was something by King George III and the British Parliament. They closed the Boston Harbor until the tea lost was paid for. They ended the Massachusetts Constitution and ended free elections of town officials. So essentially what they did is they said, okay, you guys aren't electing anybody anymore. We're just going to take over. And they put in essentially martial law. They moved to judicial authority, so they took away the authority, the local authority of the elected officials, and turned it over to Britain and British judges, basically creating the martial law, like I said. And then required the colonists to quarter British troops on demand. Now, anybody who is a student of the Constitution might recall there's something in here that is an amendment. Let me see if I can find it, because I think I know what it is right off the top of my head. Oh, yeah. Amendment number 3, which says, and I quote, "No soldier shall, in time of peace, be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law." Okay, now I've made comments on this show, all right? And I have said this multiple times. The first 10 amendments that are in the Constitution, they are majorly, is that even a word? Majorly, there we go. Majorly influenced by what happened during the American Revolution, and that's one of them. So it's stuff like this where the British Crown actually forced people to quarter British soldiers in their homes. That's where Amendment number 3 came from. Things like Amendment number, the Second Amendment, and the First Amendment, and the Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, all of these things, all of those amendments, again, came directly from actions taken by the British against the American colonies. Now I'm going to pick this back up here on the other side of this break, but before I get back to it, I just want to bring your put in front of you, bring your attention to whatever it is that I was about ready to say. I kind of stumbled there. TGRN.net, True Grit Roots Network. This is a fantastic digital radio station that can be found. You can carry it on your mobile phone. You can find it on the live365.com catalog of digital radio stations. You can do all of this, and the reason why I bring it up is because it is a fantastic blues station. If you're into blues, you got to check this out. 24/7, 365 blues. And we have got, coming up tomorrow, a fantastic lineup. Listen to this. Lady A's Gumbo and Gospel kicks us off at 9 a.m. Central Time. She is the real Lady A. Yes, that Lady A that you heard in the news with regards to the whole Lady Antebellum dust-up. Then following her, we have Oogie's Porch to Pew. That is his Sunday groove. And he eases you into Sundays by putting together some easy listening blues for you to enjoy on your Sunday morning. That's at 11 Central Time. Then that's followed up by the Queens of the Blues, where you get entertained by the female blues makers of our time. And then that's followed up by Roots and Fruits with our own Vinnie Marini, who also does music on the couch on Mondays. But Roots and Fruits, he focuses on one particular artist and how they influenced the blues in terms of their music and everything else. Then we have, following after that, we have King Street Blues, the replay, Blues Therapy Radio, which is another replay from the week prior, and Soul of the Blues with blues hound Ray Brown. All of that is on our Sunday lineup. It is a fantastic lineup. You all really should go and check it out. Go to tgrn.net. You can listen right there on tgrn.net, or you can download and get a link to download our app for free from either the Play Store or Google Play and the App Store on the iOS devices. And then you can also check us out if you already have Live 365 downloaded. You can find us there within their digital radio station. So do me a favor, go and check it out. It is fantastic, just a fantastic Sunday lineup for TGRN. That is cool for you to listen to. I appreciate that. I appreciate if you check it out. I know my team would appreciate if you check that out. And yes, I am part owner in tgrn.net. That is fantastic. Thank you very much for at least checking it out for us. I do appreciate it. All right, let me get back real quick to the Boston Tea Party. So after the coercive acts, later known as the intolerable acts, came into play, Britain had hoped, the British Parliament had hoped that would actually squelch the rebellion in New England and in the Massachusetts colony, and that actually didn't do it. The opposite actually happened. So we basically told them, family-friendly middle finger, yeah, you're done. We're out of here. And they pushed, they viewed the more punitive laws. The colonies basically said the punitive laws was further evidence of Britain's tyranny, and they rallied to Massachusetts' aid, sending supplies, plotting further resistance. And then, of course, all of that resistance and everything else keyed up what is called the shot heard round the world, which was essentially when the British troops were sent to go and capture a ammunition depot, and the Sons of Liberty, led by Samuel Adams, went and defended that depot. Also, too, other things you have to understand is that there were other tea parties that happened, other times where a couple of them where they went and raided ships and dumped tea into harbors. So It's we were rebels back then. Let me tell you, we were rebels. And the Declaration and the Resolves were written in October, or excuse me, from September of 1774 in the First Continental Congress to October of 1774 when they wrote the Declaration of Independence and really gave a big FU to the British government. And now I get the feeling that we are at a position where we probably should be doing that to our government. And I'll explain why, because I've got a few articles in here with regards to that. So first of all, let me just shift gears a little bit here. Let me get a drink first. Talking about American history and everything else just gets me thirsty. Anyway, so first of all, obviously, we know that, I told you about this on the last episode. Hunter Biden has gone and said, nope, I'm not showing up for a subpoena, and things like that. And so what ended up happening is, we haven't really heard anything yet, but the House, two committees that had subpoenaed him have talked about submitting his refusal to the Department of Justice for enforcement. We'll actually have to see how that goes. But of course, in the aftermath, we had the press secretary of all press secretaries, the last of the heap, the clown show herself, what I consider, she looks like not Krusty, but who's the other sideshow Bob on The Simpsons. She always reminds me of that when she gets up on the podium. Well, she stood up on the podium and she made some comments. Now, one of those comments actually, though, was very interesting and could possibly land Joe Biden into some other legal trouble. Oh, these guys are just so freaking, they're just so freaking fantastic. Let me just tell you. So this article that came out in Townhall, now I saw this and I kind of heard her comments and that kind of stuff. And I didn't really think anything of it at first, but then after looking back on it, I was kind of like, yeah, that could be a bit of a problem. And here kind of is the comment. So Karine Jean-Pierre revealed that Joe actually knew, like premeditated ahead of time, knew that Hunter Biden was going to skip the deposition earlier this week. According to Jonathan Turley, too, who, Jonathan Turley, now look, he's not exactly what I would say a conservative, but he does bring up a lot of good legal points, especially when it starts dealing with things like the Constitution. There's a few legal scholars that I'll actually listen to, like Mark Levin is classic. I listened to his episode on Thursday. If you have an opportunity to listen to his podcast, which is a audio distillation of his show from the previous night, if you listen to his podcast, he makes some really good points as to what the Republicans should be doing in terms of trying to impeach Joe Biden, because they should go after him for his bribery stuff. But that's not the top of Mark's list. Mark actually talks about three other things that should be part of the article's impeachment. And when you listen to him, listen to the three, you kind of almost go, I forgot about that. So I highly encourage you, check out the Mark Levin show on your podcast. Go and listen to Thursday's, what would be Wednesday night's show, because he talks about it, and realistically, it might even make your blood boil a little bit more. Dershowitz is another one. Thank you, 3 Chevy, for pointing that out. Dershowitz is another one who is not a conservative in any way, shape, or form, but he does have a middle of the road approach when it comes to the legality of a lot of the things that are going on here. Well, John Turley made a comment about him or about Jean-Pierre making a breathtaking mistake. These are his words, not mine. And by telling that reporters that Biden was certainly familiar with what his son was going to say. Now, here's the thing. If the president of the United States, who is the chief executive and chief law enforcement officer, by the way, for the entire country, is aiding and abetting a criminal because Hunter Biden decided to blow off the congressional subpoena, don't you think that's an impeachable offense? As Buddy points out, that's a violation of his presidential oath because he swore to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States. Support and defend, I guess. However, I'd have to read it again to make sure because I kind of get my oath of office when I became an enlisted member of the Army versus, what was written for the president mixed up. But it's in here, by the way. It is actually in here, the oath that he is supposed to take. But if Joe Biden knew ahead of time and did nothing to encourage his son to go and arrive for the subpoena, for the deposition, that puts him in some interesting hot water for that. And that would be something that maybe the Republicans in the House of Representatives should be looking at. You also have legal, and this is something that Mark Levin points out, you also have the legal hot water in terms of protecting our border. So Biden has been literally ignoring the law when it comes to our immigration. He's ignoring immigration law. And this is one of the key things that, just to kind of give you a little sneak peek, this is one of the things that Mark Levin points out, is that he's ignoring immigration law on our border. That's also a violation of the Constitution and his position, because he is supposed to be the guy enforcing all of the laws. He's the top executive whose primary job function is to enforce the laws as they have been written by the legislature. That's what the presidential function is. That's the primary responsibility of the president. And he's not doing it. And that by itself would be considered a high crime within the Constitution. Okay. So Turley wrote an op-ed and argued that Jean-Pierre's statement suggests that the president spoke with his son before his act of contempt and discussed his statement. He pointed out that this could add another potential charge of obstruction, bribery, conspiracy, and abuse of power for the president, which, of course, those are the charges that Mark Levin was talking about. Here's a quote from more from Turley's op-ed for those of you who are in the audio portion. I'm just going to read it for you. It's right here on the screen. But in addition, President Biden has enlisted his White House staff to actively push challenged accounts of his conduct and attack the House Republicans' investigative process. Such acts could legally bootstrap prior misconduct into his presidency under abuse of power allegations. If this latest allegation is true, the president was speaking with his son about committing a potentially criminal act of contempt. Hunter was refusing to give testimony focused not on his own role, but on his father's potential role in the alleged influence peddling. The House can pursue evidence on that conversation and how the president may have supported his son's effort. I'm being told by my unofficial executive producer to have a drink, so give me a second. All right. So again, for all of you libtards out there, and yes, excuse me, yes, I said libtards. For all of you libtards out there who think that Joe Biden is just the best thing since sliced bread, we have not had such a corrupt president in the White House And you could even line up Trump, and even if Trump was accused or was actually responsible for half the stuff that you numbnuts idiots say that he was, that still wouldn't stack up to what Biden is doing right now. Biden is ignoring the law. He's going against his oath of office. He is now helping his son to avoid a congressional subpoena. He took bribes while he was VP. We know this, and everything else. This is absolutely crazy. And the whole concept where, Hunter Biden keeps talking about how his dad wasn't financially a part of his business dealings. That's a smokescreen and an attempt to try and shift your attention elsewhere from what's going on. And in fact, the IRS whistleblowers that came out, they responded to Hunter Biden, and they basically said, or they responded to Hunter Biden's statements, and they basically say that there's ample evidence of his father's involvement in there. Hunter Biden claims his father had no financial involvement in his foreign business deals, but the two IRS whistleblowers say that there is ample evidence that President Biden was involved in son Hunter Biden's business dealings. As a former federal prosecutor accused of protecting the first family was deposed behind closed doors on Capitol Hill. So this is former Assistant U.S. Attorney Leslie Wolf, who is no longer working at the Department of Justice, Fox recently learned, was accused of limiting questions related to President Biden during the federal investigation into Hunter Biden. And according to the House Ways and Means Committee, Wolf emailed IRS investigators saying, please focus on FARA evidence only. There should be nothing about political figure one in here. And everybody knows political figure one is the president, Joe Biden. Bill Hemmer, wait a minute. I'm sorry. Joseph Ziegler, an IRS whistleblower, told Bill Hemmer, quote, that email I think is super important because it is a one-off example in the writing of constant concern of following investigative leads that might lead to Joe Biden. He also added that it had a down the road effect of not following normal leads in the probe. So, yeah. Yeah, this is just, the more it keeps getting dug up, the worse this thing gets. And now the impeachment inquiry, just as an example, is focusing on the origin of Hunter Biden's China deals during the time that Joe Biden was vice president. Now, here's the thing. A lot of people don't seem to understand this and are failing to grasp the idea, because the checks that came out from Hunter Biden's account, and I've shown you an image of the checks. The images are out. The House Oversight Committee has posted them, posted the images with, some redactions and that kind of stuff. But one of the things that a lot of people on X keep pointing out, in particular, and other social medias, but a lot of people on X keep pointing out is like, oh, well, those checks didn't come in until after Joe was out of office. Well, what you don't seem to understand is they very well are likely deferred payments, folks. Deferred payments for actions that Joe Biden took while he was VP in office, and he got the payments later. That is further supported by the upset text message, WeChat or whatever it was, text messages that Hunter Biden had, where he was hitting up the Chinese chairman, and everything else that was going on right after Joe got out of office. And they were talking about, well, the payment hasn't come yet. Well, that's because the payment happened after the services were rendered, people. And I'm sure just to make it as covered up as possible. They told these individuals, don't pay me until after I'm out of office. That way I can claim that I'm just a private person and nobody can focus on me anymore. Which again is a bunch of crap. Now, here's the thing. We have to have sworn testimony to that. It's going to be kind of hard to prove or kind of hard to show that the paper trail was actually initiated previously to Joe Biden leaving office. That's part of the reason why you have witnesses and depositions, and especially closed door depositions, and so on and so forth. And then you also have, on top of all this, you have all of the 20 plus shell companies. I mean, I only owe two. I own two companies right now, or I'm part of two companies right now. Three, if you count my regular job. But even then, they're not shell corporations. So, sitting here and putting up all of these shell corporations and stuff like that is just crazy. And then, of course, let's not even talk about the, hundreds of thousands of emails that were email accounts that were outside of the government emails that were used specifically to discuss business information between Hunter and his dad and others who were likely part of those email chains. So, this whole thing, this impeachment inquiry right now is focused on the financials of of Joe, and focused on the financials of it. But we also have other things, like I pointed out, and like Mark Levin is pointing out, that could be considered impeachable offenses that don't require all of this investigation. So, realistically, if this comes down, assuming this comes down to an impeachment trial, okay, assuming this comes down to an impeachment trial, I would love to see much more articles than just him collecting bribes. Okay. Now I'm taking I'm going to be honest. I'm taking a little hit from one of my P1s, and he does this every single time that I mention this. Look, Trump's no saint. Okay. I'm telling you, he is no saint. He is a sinner, just like the rest of us, just like all people. Okay. But the fact that he's been investigated through, 7 years worth of investigations kind of shows that if there was anything really there of what he might have done, if there was any evidence of it, it would have been plastered all over the freaking mainstream media. Okay. It would have been plastered everywhere. And that's just like him, people are saying, well, Trump and Epstein, they were like really good buddies, blah, 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 which, by the way, they tried to subpoena the Epstein logs last week or the week before, and Dick Durbin stopped it. I wonder why. But anyway, sorry, I digress, got off on a little tangent there. But the thing about it is they've already been literally up Trump's butt. Sorry, they've been literally up Trump's butt for God knows how many years, and nothing major has come out. But yet here we are. We're just scratching the surface on the Biden crime family. So, look, I honestly, anytime somebody says, oh, Trump did this, Trump did that, there's no evidence there. There's no evidence there. Okay? There really isn't. There's no evidence. And, even if there is evidence, it's all like circumstantial or very, very weak or he's already been investigated. Come on. We're just scratching the surface on the Bidens because they've been protected for so long. Speaking about that protection, here's an article that came out with regards to that Wolf lady. So, let's see. So she was the federal prosecutor who allegedly interfered in the criminal investigation of Hunter Biden to protect both President Biden and his son. Well, she just recently left the Justice Department, according to a report in the New York Post. Former Delaware Assistant U.S. U.S. Attorney Leslie Wolf's quiet departure emerged as she appeared for a deposition with the House Judiciary Committee on Thursday morning following the Wednesday night House vote to formally authorize the impeachment inquiry into Joe Biden over his role in his son and brother's former foreign business dealings. The report continues. Wolf's starring role in the alleged Justice Department cover-up of the criminal investigation of the alleged tax fraud and foreign lobbying violations is a significant part of the impeachment inquiry, with whistleblowers saying she discouraged asking witnesses questions about the big guy or dad, referring to Joe Biden, claiming there was no specific criminality to that line of questioning. Yeah. So anyway, two IRS agents, Gary Shapley and Joseph Ziegler, of course, alleged in prior testimony to the House committees that Wolf tipped off Hunter Biden's lawyers, to investigative steps and forbade inquiries into Joe Biden, even when communications specifically mentioned him. Wolf allegedly instructed FBI agents in August 2020 to remove references to Joe Biden from a search warrant affidavit, writing, "Someone needs to redraft the affidavit. There should be nothing about political figure one in here," according to an email released by the Ways and Means Committee. So, folks, I'm telling you right now, look, we're just scratching the surface. We haven't even gotten into this. If frickin' Richard Nixon is rolling over in his grave right now because of the wonderful thing that's going on here in front of us. Yeah. So, 3 Chevy, just real quick. I do have something on that in just a minute. You're jumping the gun here. So that being said, President Biden now has reached a new low in his approval rating. According to this from Townhall, President Biden's job approval finds a new low before the new year. And there it is. He apparently has a 5-point slide. So he used to be at like 38% job approval rating, according to the polls and stuff like that. But now he's barely making 33%. From the beginning of 2023 and 21 points lower than when he first took office. Look, I've been telling you about these polls. I've been talking to you about these polls. These polls have been sliding and dropping ever since he did that absolute horrible debacle of a withdrawal in Afghanistan. Which, by the way, I am trying to get, if anybody is aware of this, I'm attempting to get Sean Parnell in for an interview here soon. I'm trying to put some pressure on him to get an interview, and I would love to converse with him a little bit about the Afghanistan withdrawal. So that's one of the things that is on a topic that I would love to talk to him about in terms of getting his opinions on that. But we're looking at nearly 2-to-1 Americans who are disapproving of Biden's job performance. If you're on Rumble, or if you want to head over to Rumble, you can look at the graph that I have here. The disapproval is at 64 and the approval rate is at 33. Now, obviously that only adds up to 97. So a full 3% decided not to answer that. But yeah, I'm trying, like, this is just crazy. This is just nuts. And I really am thinking, that it's stuff like this that kind of shows, honestly, that if this continues in through 2024, you are probably not going to see Biden as the nominee. Even if he wins the DNC, I don't think they're going to do it. Even if he were to win, like the primaries, I honestly think the DNC will probably at the very last minute would shift and go away. And yes, Mama Five Kitty says, I would love to know the 33%. Well, I can tell you at least some of them show up on X and freaking just, they try to pick me apart on X whenever I post something. And it's getting less and less because these idiots are just, they're literally that. They're idiots. But you know, I just don't see how anybody can sit here and look at this and just go, you know what? This guy is just fantastic. I really don't understand this. But then again, those are the types of people, honestly, they're the types of people who have taken our society and turned it into the cesspool that we currently have, going on right now. But before I get into that, I want to tell you, I want to tell you about this fantastic place to get some really, really awesome gear. Some really good quality products too. Let me just tell you, you really need to check it out. It is the Whiskey Musings Broadcast store. Head on over to store.whiskeymusings.online and pick up some fantastic apparel. You can get things like caps with my logo on them, or not my logo, but my saying, when I drink, I think, on them. You can get, hey, you know what? It's wintertime. You should get yourself a gaiter, a 2-ply gaiter. Check this thing out. It's got my logo on it. I'm trying to get it lined up here. This is fantastic. This thing is just, you saw, Captain Unicorn wearing this. He loves that thing. He loves it. It's great to cover up your face from the cold, bitter winter wind. You can get t-shirts, sweatshirts, glassware. There's just all kinds of water bottles. There's just all kinds of stuff. Go and check it out at store.whiskeymusings.online. That's store.whiskeymusings.online. And hey, right now, before Christmas. Oh, and yes, Amy keeps reminding me, I played with the rats. Apparently, I brought good luck. I told you all about that with Amy and her dogs doing the barn hunts with the rats. I actually played with the rats. She sent me a photo of it. It's great. But anyway, head on over to store.whiskeymusings.online and get yourself 15% off your entire order. My Christmas gift to you by using promo code Christmas, all capital letters, Christmas in all capital letters, Christmas in the promo code box at checkout in order to get 15% off your entire order. That's 15% off by going to store.whiskeymusings.online, selecting some great stuff, great gear, and then at the checkout, promo code box, put in Christmas, all capital letters, and you'll get 15% off. It is fantastic, and I appreciate that because, of course, when you purchase, you help support the show. And I always, I love when I get rumble rants and things like that. I appreciate that, but I also feel like you guys should be getting something in return. So, going to the store and going to any of the sponsors or any of the affiliates that I post, that's really where I want you to go if you can. I don't get me wrong. I appreciate the rumble rants, but I always feel bad about that. I always feel a little bad about that. Because I'd want you to get something in return. So go to store.whiskeymusings.online, put in promo code Christmas at checkout, all capital letters, and get 15% off your order, your entire order. All right. So moving on here, one of the things that is obviously a really bad thing with regards to this administration, I mean, and believe it or not, the destruction realistically of our great society that we have here. And one of the things that's been going on is the FBI's targeting of Catholics. Well, you remember I talked about this. This was a while ago when this came out, but I talked about this for a while. Well, it turns out that they actually went beyond what the original the original one is the original stories were telling us. Heavily redacted records showed the FBI's targeting of Catholics went beyond what it claimed, according to a watchdog. And the FBI insisted that the controversial memo was the work of a single field office, but it turns out that it actually went beyond that. Judicial Watch obtained the documents through a FOIA request related to an internal FBI memo that, of course, was leaked earlier this year. I talked about it, which revealed the agency had efforts underway to identify and treat Catholics as potential terrorists. The records also indicate coordination with officials from Portland and Milwaukee, the press release had originally said. Well, the FBI Richmond internal memo titled Interest of Racially or Ethnically Motivated Violent Extremists in Radical Traditionalist Catholic Ideology almost certainly presents new mitigation opportunities. That was the title of the freaking memo. Oh my gosh. Anyway, that's almost the entire memo. It was leaked in January and drew instant criticism from the left or from the right. They could say Republicans, but through conservatives too. But apparently, headquarters began to take action following the leak to the memo, that they were looking to remove the document from FBI systems and conduct a review for the basis of the document. That was according to Christopher Wray. He kind of said that it was only a single FBI office in Richmond. But Judicial Watch is now suggesting that these new documents show that that was actually not the case, and that the issue was much more broader than what was let on, than the FBI originally let on. Yeah, he covered up his ass. That's what he did. Christopher Wray tried to cover his ass, and it didn't work. Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton wrote that these documents should trigger a criminal inquiry into the Biden FBI scandal. So, yeah. So they're now targeting Catholics as a religion to be watched. And as we further spiral down into depravity, apparently this week, this is in the Washington Examiner. This particular piece is in the Washington Examiner, but I also saw this come out. There was a video leaked about a Senate staffer that, let's just say he was having sex in a hearing room. Video got leaked, and he was engaged in explicit sexual activity in a congressional hearing room, and now this guy is threatening legal action after he was widely named on social media while alluding to poor judgment in the past. Apparently this guy, and I'm not even going to say his name because realistically it's freaking, I don't even want to talk. I mean, anyway, he's an aide for Senator Ben Cardin, who is, of course, a Democrat, did not address the pornographic video directly in his Friday evening LinkedIn post, instead only outright denying an unrelated accusation that he accosted Representative Max Miller, who is a Republican from Ohio, on Capitol Hill on Wednesday. So now he's the explicit video, which was published on Friday, purportedly showing two men engaging in sexual intercourse on the dais, or the platform in the freaking hearing room. The Daily Caller, which obtained the video. This is just so sad. I mean, this really is. I'm sorry. I can't even. You want to talk about the problems in our world and our society here? Okay. I'm sorry. I'm going to digress here for a second. This is just a one example of many. Our society is literally going down. I mean, I don't really care. It wouldn't even matter, honestly. To me, it wouldn't even matter if it was a man and a woman, okay? This is bullshit. This is complete bullshit, okay? Complete bullshit. I don't care if he was gay. I don't care, that part I don't care. This is like, this has literally no semblance of civility or God, I can't even freaking say. I can't even put words into this. This is just so damn disgusting. It wouldn't even matter to me, honestly, if it was a man and a woman versus two men. That's not the problem here. This is the depravity that we have in our country today. People seem to think that shit like this is acceptable. And this is crap. This is complete bullshit. I mean, even just like understanding the enormity or the respect for that chamber, for that Congress or Senate chamber. I mean, have a little bit more respect than this. Have a little bit more respect than this bullshit. And here, I mean, this is just again, this is just one of those things that you look at this and you go, what in the hell are these people thinking? Do whatever the hell you want in your bedroom, okay? Do whatever the hell you want inside your bedroom. You want to film yourself there? You want to post it online? I don't give a crap. But there's certain places and certain things that you should not be doing and would be essentially against this. Completely against crap like this. I mean, what the hell happened to like indecent exposure laws? This is a public freaking building. For all, yeah, I mean, come on. It's one of the most covered in cameras buildings that we ever had. I mean, this is complete bullshit. If this guy ends up freaking not getting any time out of this is just extra proof that Democrats can do whatever the hell they want to do and get away with it. And according to the article, here, a representative of the U.S. Capitol Police said in a statement to the Washington Examiner, "We are aware and looking into this." I mean, look, you want to get your rocks off, fine, but don't freaking, I mean, let's be honest. They were talking about restoring decency with the presidency of Joe Biden. There's no decency anymore. There's none. We've dived down into a level of depravity and crap that I can't even imagine. This is just sickening. I'm sorry. And what's even more sickening is stuff like the next article that I have. Fuck, God, I'm just sorry. Anyway, the New York Post wrote this. A 50-year-old trans swimmer shared a locker room while competing against teens. Okay, first of all, trans swimmer? Okay, if it were a teen boy and teen girls, I mean, that's bullshit just by itself. I'm sorry, it just is. But 50? Seriously? People, 50 years old and he's competing against the teens? What the hell in the I don't even, oh my God, I don't even know who the hell this person was. He was allowed to compete against the teenage girls at an event in Canada. Thank God that was Canada, not here. Okay. But parents apparently were horrified when the guy came in to change, and he's building a makeshift. The parents were building a makeshift tent out of towels in order to shield the girls as young as 8 in the locker room. Yeah. Melody Wisehart, who once competed under the name Nicholas Cepeda, sparked outrage while competing during the Trojan Cup in Barrie, Ontario. The girls were terrified. An unidentified parent of one of the teenagers told the Toronto Sun of having to share a locker room with a much older trans swimmer. It's all confusing. It's all so confusing for the kids, another parent said. No one is comfortable. Everyone is accepting of all people, but them swimming against our kids and being in a locker room with them is not appropriate. Seriously? I mean, okay, look, why? That's just like, I don't know if anybody's seen the articles on this, but there's apparently a like 40-year-old man who is playing female basketball at some university or whatever. And when you look at the photos of this guy, he like stands over head and shoulders above the rest of both teams. Not even like, you know, just over his team. He's like, he would be like Shaquille O'Neal playing against teenagers. I mean, that's literally how this guy looks against the ladies who are part of this university team. And how anybody can sit here and look at this and not realize that, one, I mean, just the fact that there are physical differences between men and women, males and females, and that we should be separating these two apart, regardless, whenever you're dealing with like age or whatever. When you throw in the age factor, that becomes even worse. And just the idea of men or biological men competing in a women's sports league where the biological man can, you know, totally outstrength, outbody these people. I mean, I don't know if anybody's, I mean, we've even seen like the transgender male playing female volleyball who freaking broke the young woman's nose. Like almost crushed her skull. We've seen it in the MMA where these guys are swapping over and they go in, they're claiming that they're trans, and they go in and they're like literally crushing these ladies' skulls, their orbital bones and all this other crap. This is ridiculous. This is totally ridiculous. This whole world is like gotten all screwed up. There's no decency. There's no morality. There's no ethics, integrity, standards anymore. It's all gone. It's like, it's all gone. And yet here we have just the left is just going bonkers over the idea that Donald Trump will come back in the White House. Bad segue. But anyway, I got to get off that other freaking, it's just so disgusting. Anyway, the Daily Fetched showed this MSNBC guest who sits here and literally claims that Trump is going to turn off the internet if he wins in 2024. What the hell? A former member of the resistance in the Trump administration, Miles Taylor, predicted that Donald Trump could turn off the internet if elected president in 2024. Folks, this is going to get worse, okay? This is going to get worse before it gets better, all right? This is completely going to get worse before it gets better. And I'll be honest with you. I mean, these people they've gone off the deep end. They have literally no understanding of like basic science, basic biology. They freaking just don't get it. And let me point out this too. Apparently there was a study that came out, and this, these people are so freaking, they're off the rockers. They're gone. I'm sorry. They're just gone. But PJ Media put this out. Apparently there's a science study that was done that pins climate change on now, not on, carbon emissions. Well, it is carbon emissions because we all blow out CO2, But now they're pinning climate change on human breathing. Hello. And this is stemming from our good old friend Bill Gates, who, by the way, is not a scientist. He happened to be smart enough to put together a product at the time when there isn't any, and he was able to parlay that into a successful business. But he freaking Bill Gates admitted in 2010 to everybody, like, applauded when he said this shit too. But he said in a TED Talk, this: the world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by about 10 to 15%. Now, if we put out a lot of carbon dioxide every year, over 26 billion tons, and somehow we have to make changes that will bring that down to zero, this equation has 4 factors. A little bit of multiplication. So you've got a thing on the left, CO2, that you want to get to zero. That's going on based on the number of people, the services each person is using on average, the energy, blah, blah, blah. But he continues on here saying probably one of these numbers is going to have to get pretty near zero. And the audience laughed about it. This guy is straight up a man who wants to depopulate the planet. And you sit here and wonder, I mean, okay, the guy might be brilliant. I mean, it's no different, honestly, it's no different than like Elon Musk, in my view. All right. He could be really, really smart, but that doesn't mean that he's really, really smart in this particular category. Just because he happens to be rich and was successful in his business means literally zero for this. And I've got a question for Bill Gates. We all know that CO2, like Becky says over on Facebook, that's why we have trees and other plants. Everybody knows that CO2 is used by all of our plant life in order to recreate oxygen. If we go to zero on our CO2 emissions, what the hell is that going to do to upset the entire freaking planet? I swear, sometimes these people are so damn dumb. They're the stupid smart people, like Dan Bongino and the rest, and the Andre, whatever his name is, Anatolov or whatever it said. It's the stupid smart people. It's the people who act like they're smart, but yet they are incredibly dumb. Can't even freaking believe this shit. Speaking of dumb people, especially the stupid smart people, have you seen all of the, and this is a really bad segue, but I'm going to do it anyway. Down with it. Have you seen all of the conversation about how Bidenomics is doing great? And then, of course, here recently, we just saw like the stock market topped 39,000 or something like that. And he created like this, the stock market's doing great. Must mean the economy is doing absolutely fantastic. Well, one thing that these nimrods don't seem to understand is that, yes, the stock market went up, but there's a reason why people are investing in the stock market. They're investing in the stock market because of the fact that they aren't buying other things. They're investing in the stock market. I said buying other things, but they're investing in the stock market in the idea that the stock market is going to go up. And there's actually trends that we see this, where when monetary policy and inflation goes up, you're buying and hiding money in stocks. You're not necessarily buying physical gold or silver or any of that stuff, but one of the key biggest people who has made literally billions, Warren Buffett, actually sold off stocks. Now, why he sold it off, it could be maybe he needed cash or something like that. Who the hell knows? But the point is that the economy is not doing great. The economy itself is not doing great, especially for the average American or the average individual around the world. Okay? For the rich who are able to weather the additional interest rates or and inflation rates, everything's fine. But if you're living paycheck to paycheck, it's not. It's not even close. And these people are sitting here, they're freaking, they keep talking about how the economy is so absolutely wonderful. Well, there's some indicators, by the way. And keep in mind, too, that economy-wise, this is like the first, well, since COVID, this is the first time we've ever been in this kind of a situation. So we really don't have much of a history to necessarily go on, but there's some key indicators that indicate that maybe we're not in such a great place. And right here from the Washington Examiner, I'm just going to give you a quick rundown of this, but there's an indication of what's called the nominal gross domestic product, or NGDP, not just GDP, but NGDP. And so here's the thing, is that NGDP, when it is extremely high, and NGDP is the number that is taken before you account for inflation, okay? But NGDP, when it's running hot, which it is right now, it's running at like 9% or something like that. And when you take into account, 2 to 3% inflation, it's running down around 6 to 7%. When it's running hot, that is an indicator that something is potentially going to happen. Because in the past, and we haven't seen this, analysts, especially David Beckworth, talks about this, that the economy is warmer than many believe. And they think they are thinking that if the NGDP growth continues, so keep in mind NGDP it only has been evaluated up until the third quarter. So a fourth quarter could affect what I'm about to say, okay? But generally speaking, if NGDP is going up and going up very, very quickly, which it is right now, there is a indicator that if the Fed decides to back off on interest rates like they are talking, that we could essentially end up in a situation where productivity, which is what this is evaluating, drops off. It's happened in the past. And so when you add to that the unemployment rate like what we have now, okay, when you add to that the unemployment rate being low, our productivity rate, by the way, is fairly low, which is one of the reasons why I keep telling you that we're in kind of a scary situation here, okay? One that we haven't seen in a long time. But here's the thing, when the NGDP was going higher and higher and higher, it was doing that in 1970s, in the 70s, and right into the early 80s, right before Reagan came in and did what he did and flattened us out, by the way, for a nominal bit of growth in terms of inflation, but an explosion of growth in terms of productivity. And so there's indicators out there. Everybody keeps talking about, oh, the economy is great. Well, there's indicators out there that are showing that it's not as healthy as what everybody is thinking about. Okay? I'm telling you, there's things out there. There's stuff out there in terms of the economy. And speaking of that, according to this Epoch Times article, which, I mean, realistically, it should be, the economy is the number one concern for voters in 2024. Not abortion, not any of these other things, but the economy itself is the number one concern for voters. And the Democrats they're trying to hype it up, but nobody's buying it. Nobody is buying it. So 2024 is going to definitely be an interesting election in terms of what's happening. All right. So that is my final Whiskey Musings thought of the evening. Hey, I've got a question for you really quick in the chats. Okay. really quick in the chats, do you guys like the links that I put in the descriptions? Because honestly, I'm starting to think I need to shorten up those descriptions and maybe not put all the links that I use for all the articles. Do you guys actually get value out of that? If so, do me a favor and either in the comments on this video or in the chats right now, just let me know. Yes, if you get value out of all those links, or no, if you're not really interested in those links, and maybe I'll consider shortening them up, shortening up the descriptions and taking out all of those links. But if you go and just would let me know what's going on. And yes, there's no question for tonight. I didn't receive one, buddy. If you're trying to send me one, because you ask why no question, if you've sent me one, I don't have it. I don't know what happened, but I don't have it. So anyway, do me a favor, if you like what I do and you like what I'm presenting, my program and everything, head on over to Rumble. Rumble's my favorite. Although I've honestly, considering the last time that Rumble got hit with the DDoS attack, I'm kind of thinking of some other backups. But do me a favor and head on over to Rumble, sign up for an account, it's free, and hit that green follow button. Follow me on Rumble. I'm really paying attention to Rumble, mainly just because of the fact that there aren't too many. I mean, I've gotten some movement on YouTube, but and definitely I've gotten some movement on Facebook, and I'll keep sending stuff to those. But I really want to focus on Rumble, because Rumble is the free speech alternative to any of those others. And so just, do me a favor and pay attention to Rumble. Even if you just go over and sign up for an account but prefer to watch on like Facebook or whatever, that's cool. I don't mind. Just gives you an alternate in case I get kicked off of either YouTube or Facebook for some stupid crap that I've said, because I've already said a few things that Rumble or that YouTube has kicked me off of. So anyway, all right. As we head in, remember we're in single digits now, heading over to Christmas. We're now in single digits. 9 days away today. And no, I am not going to stop. Everything is still going to be the same over the Christmas break. Where everybody else is dropping into the holidays, I'm not going to do that, because my shows don't show up on the holidays. So we will see you on Wednesday, starting at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, right here on the Whiskey Musings Broadcast channel. Have a great rest of your weekend, and enjoy until next time. Good night, everybody.
The Whiskey Musings Broadcast is produced by Active Eye Media, LLC. All rights reserved.